We're live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Memorial Day, and welcome to the 37th episode of the FilmBrony Podcast. I am, of course, the co-host, Nick Canino, the guy who's in charge of this podcast. And as always, I'm not alone on this one. I got someone with me, the main host and the one who is responsible for starting the FilmBrony Podcast. So, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, I don't have anything special to say this time around, so I guess I'm Søren the FilmBrony. I'm the guy who initially started this podcast, and I got some reviews and a special little topic that I pretty much came up with at the last minute.
And we'll get to that, and we'll get to that tier list that you came up with later on after we talk about the reviews and stuff. But as always, we like to start out. As always, with the FilmBrony Podcast, we like to of course start out with the first thing on our plate today, and that is the Blu-ray Showcase.
All right, I got 50/50 Warm Bodies and Perks of a Wallflower.
Nice.
51st Stage, one of Adam Sandler's better comedies.
Very underrated too.
I got this America Lost and Found Criterion Collection.
Nice.
I also have Amour.
That's a great film.
Attack the Block.
A great film.
This MGM Family Collection.
Nice.
Breaking.
Very overlooked. A very good film.
Bridge on the River Kwai and Guns of Navarone.
Two terrific films right there.
Broadcast News.
One of James L. Brooks' finest films he's done.
Brothers.
Nice.
Click.
Nice.
Cool Hand Luke.
A classic.
Dangerous Liaisons.
One of Stephen Frears' finest films.
Crash, not the Best Picture winner, the David Cronenberg film.
That's an overlooked gem. A very underrated gem.
I also got this huge DCEU collection all the way from Man of Steel up until the first Shazam.
Nice.
Disturbia. The French Lieutenant's Woman.
That's a great film.
Fright Night.
A horror classic.
Fright Night.
The remake's very good too.
Mean Girls, Clueless, and She's the Man.
Nice.
The Hitman's Bodyguard. Just the first one, mind you.
Nice.
Julieta.
That's a great film.
A Knight's Tale.
Really underrated.
Lost Highway.
Another underrated gem from David Lynch.
National Treasure 1 and 2.
Nice.
The Peanut Snoopy collection. It includes A Boy Named Charlie Brown, Snoopy Come Home, Race for Your Life Charlie Brown, and Bon Voyage Charlie Brown. And I also got a movie that I initially didn't really love at first, but upon further viewing, it is among this particular studio's best. The Peanuts movie.
Yes!
Possessor.
Nice. That's a great film.
Son of Saul.
That's a great film.
Southpaw.
Very underrated.
The Steve McQueen collection.
Nice.
Synecdoche, New York.
A very underrated film from Charlie Kaufman.
The Three Colors trilogy.
Blue, White, and Red by Krzysztof Kieslowski.
Mm-hmm. Tommy Boy.
That's a funny film.
Volver.
That's a great movie.
Next, I have one of two movies that got nominated for the animated Oscar instead of the Peanuts movie in Hotel Transylvania 2, where I got When Marnie Was There.
I heard great things about that one.
Wild Tales.
Nice.
And last but not least, the X-Men trilogy as well as First Class.
Nice. All right, so I have with me 9 Blu-rays. Not 9 Blu-rays. So I'm gonna go ahead and show them to you all right now. One of my favorite movies of 2013, Prisoners.
One of Denise Rich's best.
Yes. And then Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, one of my favorite movies of 2015.
Can't wait for Dead Reckoning next month.
Me too. Actually in 2 months, but oh well.
Yeah.
Another one of my favorite movies of 2015, Creed.
Great. That's a great movie.
One of my favorite movies of 2017, Baby Driver.
Yep, one of 2017's best.
Yes. The Rider, one of my favorite movies of 2018.
I've heard good things about that one. I really liked Nomadland. And while Eternals wasn't great, I do appreciate its ambition.
Same here. The Invisible Man.
One of the better 2020 movies.
I agree. Søren, I know you're going to... Hopefully we could still be friends after this because Triangle of Sadness. I love this movie.
Nope. I'm not saying it. Not saying a word.
Oh, well. Women Talking, one of my favorite movies of last year.
Shut up, Søren. Shut the fuck up, Søren.
And one of my favorite movies of last year, Living.
That's more like it.
Yes.
And I also got 2 plushies to add to my collection, and both of them are from Disney movies.
Nice.
All right, that's it for our Blu-ray Showcase, and now for some movie reviews.
All right, so we're going to get started right now with, well, why don't we get started with the movie that you and I probably have a disagreement about?
Honestly,
it's involving a sequel.
Oh, yeah. Shazam! Fury of the Gods. To me, this movie delivers on the fun action and effects you've come to expect from the superhero genre, especially with the performances and high stakes. However, I will say it's not quite as polished as the first movie due to some issues I have. I felt the villains were a bit underwhelming compared to Dr. Sivana in the previous film. I felt the pacing here and there, especially in some weird-ass moments, especially one with Zeman Hanju near the beginning, as well as an ending that's the pure definition of an ex machina. And I'm gonna have to go into spoilers for this one, so when I turn this cam back on, then that means you can unmute it. So basically, after Billy Batson sacrifices himself to defeat the giant dragon and save the day, and after they buried him and everything, out of nowhere, Wonder Woman comes in to bring him back to life, as well as give everyone else their powers back. Like, if she had the power to just bring back Billy back to life, why didn't she do the same as Steve Trevor? You know, without having his soul possessed around Stranger's body.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
But aside from that, it was a fun, albeit flawed sequel that's bound to satisfy you until James Gunn inevitably reboots the DC franchise in 2025, so I'll give this one the seal of approval.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Søren, but I could not stand this movie at all, and that's a shame because I love the first Shazam movie. Not only was it entertaining, not only was it one of the most entertaining films I saw that year, but it took its concept on like what if Big met Superman, and used it in a charming and delightful way possible. With this sequel, though, oh my god. Basically, this is what happens when you take away the charm that was in the first movie. When you completely take away the charm and magic that the first film was well known for and make the sequel into such an underwhelmingly boring mess. The only positives I have with and Shazam: Fury of the Gods is one of the worst examples of this, and it shows why. Honestly, I just had it with the DC extended universe this year, and I know there's still a few more to go later this year, including what some people are looking forward to, The Flash, which I am not looking forward to The Flash at all. Blue Beetle, I'm not that excited for, nor am I excited for the new Aquaman film, even despite James Wan directing it.
Especially considering AH being involved in that.
Like, for real. The only positive I did have with the film is that the acting was solid. Zachary Levi is still his charming self. He still gives out a very good performance. The score was very good. The cinematography was very good, and the visual effects were very good too. However, this movie was a mess. From its story to its writing to its directing to its humor that feels really not that funny, honestly. To the action sequences not looking that exciting, to the editing being all over the place, the pacing being a wonky mess, and the ending and mid-credit scene being just absolutely atrocious. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but this movie was such a disappointing mess from start to finish. It was boring. It was generic, and it was flat out underwhelming and forgettable. Originally, I was going to give this a 4 out of 10 or a C minus, but when that awful mid credit scene happened, but when that awful mid credit scene happened, I lowered it down to a 3 out of 10 or a D plus. I really despise this one. It is easily one of the most disappointing films I've seen this year so far.
Next up, we have Champions, and this was the pure definition of a predictable cloud pleaser. While it's not subversively directed or particularly that unpredictable, it is well acted and decently written enough to have a fun time. If you're looking for something special and subversive, this ain't it. But if you're in the mood for a decent underdog/redemption sports movie, I'd say give it a rental, as I'll give it the seal of accuracy.
I'm on the same boat as you. It's predictable and cliche, but it's forgivable due to how well directed and well acted the film felt. And the film does have a good soundtrack, great cinematography, solid editing, and excellent basketball sequences. However, I do think, the story can be a bit predictable, and the writing was a mess at times, especially with its dialogue and tone. And at times, the pacing did feel a bit wonky. The movie did suffer through some pacing issues here and there, and there's some shoehorned in jokes that really that I was like, really. But other than that, when you really think about it, it's not really all that bad. It was just decent. Really, all Champions is this a cliched and predictable yet decent crowd-pleasing sports comedy. Nothing too amazing about this movie to write home about, but at the same time, it's not really a bad movie. 6 out of 10 or B minus.
Next, we have Inside with Willem Dafoe. This movie about an art thief who inadvertently gets himself locked up in a high-tech apartment with no communication from the outside may not be for everyone due to its slow pace. But what ultimately makes this worth seeing is the superb direction by Felix Katsoupas. Apologize if I mispronounce your name. Its simplistic yet effective screenplay reflecting themes of isolation, and the performance by Willem Dafoe make it worth seeing at least once. As for me, this is one of the better films of the year, which I'll give the seal of cinema.
For me, it's good, but it's well directed, and the film delivers some great production design, cinematography, as well as a very good musical score and solid editing. But Willem Dafoe's performance, oh boy, wow! Without him, this movie could have been a mediocre misfire. He seriously steals the entire show in this one. His acting in the film was absolutely incredible, and the film does deliver an intriguing claustrophobic atmosphere on what it would look like if you were trapped in one place, like the penthouse in the film, with no food or water whatsoever. However, the reason why I don't love this movie is because I wish the story could have been fleshed out more, since there's not much of it other than Willem Dafoe's character being trapped in an abandoned art penthouse with no food and water, and the script could have used some improvement on the characters and dialogue. Also, the movie suffers from pacing issues in some parts, and the ending felt rushed too. But overall, I thought Inside was a solid movie that's worth checking out just for Willem Dafoe's brilliant performance. So, with that alone, I give it a 7 out of 10, or B.
All right,
another film I gave a 7 out of 10 or B too is the film starring Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. It's called Moving On. Moving On is basically about two old friends played by Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin respectively, who reconnect at a funeral and decide to get revenge on the widower played by Malcolm McDowell, who messed with them decades before. I like this movie, but I didn't love it, and I'll explain why after I talk about my positives. The positives I have with the film is that Paul Weiss's script and directing were both solid. The acting was very good, especially from Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda, who delivered such very good performances and chemistry. And I thought Malcolm McDowell gave out a good performance in the film, although I didn't like how they set him up as a villain. The score and editing were both solid. The cinematography was very good, and the ending was satisfying too. However, what kept Moving On from being a great movie was its frustratingly inconsistent tone. Like, at times, it couldn't even decide if it wanted to be a dark comedy or a dark drama, and that alone was a bit frustrating at times. I was also disappointed that the story didn't have me invested as much as it wanted to, mainly due to how rushed and complicated it felt. And the film felt too short for its 85-minute runtime. Like, I wish the film was 15 more minutes longer, so that I would get more invested in the story and characters. And the pacing was a frantic mess. Was a frantic mess as a result of this too. But overall, it was still a solid movie that's worth checking out just for the performances alone, including Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda. So, like I said before, this is a 7 out of 10 or a B. Not a great movie, but still a solid one regardless.
Next, we have John Wick Chapter 4. I will say that after 3 action masterpieces, this doesn't quite hold as much of a candle to them as I imagined. It's definitely too long, especially with a story that you probably need a map to get through, and there are a couple instances where John sure freaking died, especially considering that long stairway near the end. But other than that, this was a solid conclusion to the main story that ties everything up with a nice bow with its thrilling action, good acting, and certain direction. I definitely say give this a watch if you're a fan, even if it's not as thrilling of an experience as some of the other ones. It gets a seal of approval from me.
Can you still
yeah,
hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, good. Sorry about that, folks. Sorry about that, folks. I loved this movie. I really, really love this movie. I think it's one of my favorite films of the year so far. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I really love this movie. I think it's one of the most highly entertaining films I've seen this year so far, and one of the most thrilling. And it's one of the fun times I had watching a movie this year so far. Um, the performances, especially from Keanu Reeves and Keanu. Shit. I'm trying to remember, but my mind sometimes like goes into like a bad brain fart. Sadly, Keanu Reeves was fantastic as John Wick as always. Donnie Yen was fantastic. Bill Skarsgård was great. Lawrence Fishburne was fantastic. All the acting was terrific. The musical score was fantastic. The cinematography was terrific. The editing was fantastic, especially with the action sequences, with the way they were shot, edited, and choreographed. Wow. It's very well directed. The writing was terrific. The story had me emotionally invested throughout. And you know what? Søren, I actually disagree with you on the fact it was long. Yes, it was a long film, but it definitely needed to be that way to fit the tone, fit like there was but there were reasons why the film had to be long because of how much they had to they had to
How much they had to sum up?
yeah, how much how much they had to sum up the whole thing, and that alone was the reason why it worked for me. So it's very well paced. It's a very well paced movie, and the ending was absolutely fantastic. Overall, this is one of the best movies I've seen this year so far. It's highly entertaining. It's action packed, thrilling, and it was just all around exciting to watch. Easily one of the best of the year so far. And John Wick Chapter 4, without a doubt, gets my very first 10 out of 10 or an A plus.
My next movie, though, is Assassin. I'm usually not the least bit interested in these DVD Bruce Willis movies, but seeing how this is his last ever performance due to his retirement, I decided to give this a shot. Turns out I expected nothing out of this and got precisely that. It blatantly rips off Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor with his premise of taking over people's mind to kill people, but does fuck all with it. The story and characters are practically non existent. The acting and filmmaking aren't the least bit remarkable, and I was just bored and uninterested throughout the 87 minutes of my life this movie took. Honestly, the only reason you should see this movie is to see how much of an unenthusiastic note Bruce's career ended on, as this movie gets a seal of disapproval.
That's unfortunate. Next film I'm going to talk about is The Lost King, and it's based on a true story and the 2013 book called The King's Grave: The Search for Richard III, in which we follow Philippa Langley, played by Sally Hawkins, the woman who initiated the search to find King Richard III's remains under a car park in Leicester, and her treatment Leicester, I'm sorry, and her treatment by the university in claiming of credit for the discovery for the discovery. Not only did The Lost King feature Sally Hawkins in one of her best performances she's given out, but I also found The Lost King to be inspirational and an engaging experience. Although the pacing can feel a bit wonky at times, and the film does have its share of cliches thrown into it, I really enjoyed The Lost King regardless. It's not one of Stephen Frears' best movies, but I do think it's a really good one that you should definitely check out. Also, Steve Coogan and Harry Lloyd were fantastic too, as well as Mark Addy. So 8 out of 10 or a B plus. Good job, Stephen Frears.
Next, we have Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. This is a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. While the pacing can be a bit slow at times, and the effects are mostly really good, but there were one or two shots that look a bit shady. What really got me invested are the fun characters and surprisingly entertaining writing by the game night guys. The production values and music really helped the experience too. I'm not surprised this did okay at the box office but this was an entertaining fantasy film. With fun fantasy and action for kids and engaging characters and writing for adults, this really has something for everyone, and I'm gonna give it an enthusiastic seal of approval.
I love this movie. I really, really love this one. This was the biggest surprise that I've seen this year so far. I have been critical towards most movies that are produced by Hasbro, minus a few exceptions, which are Ouija Origin of Evil, which is a better prequel than the next shitty Ouija movie from 2014. Um, Bumblebee and to some extent My Little Pony the movie. Um, but without a doubt, Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves is the best. Is the best Hasbro movie I've ever seen. When I saw the trailer for it, I was afraid that it was going to be a generic fantasy movie that rips off some elements from Marvel. But when I saw the final product, I was wrong. Dead wrong. And honestly, the film marketing really hurt the film getting a sequel, which really hurt the film's chance. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. And honestly, I'm not surprised that the marketing hurt the film's chances at getting a sequel. Like Paramount really. And I'll be honest, there were one or two things I didn't like about the film. Well, I understand why the film was 134 minutes long. There were maybe one or two scenes in it that kept going on and on to the point where I was like, okay, let's move on, please. And while I love most of the characters of the film, there were a couple side characters, including Hugh Grant's character, that I wasn't a fan of because of how underdeveloped they felt. Despite this, though, this movie was terrific. From its story to its writing to its directing to its action sequences, visual effects, acting, it's terrific acting, especially from Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez. Rodriguez, I'm sorry, and to its editing, to its pacing, to its really good production values and costume design, and some really fun action sequences. It's a really good humor and a really satisfying ending as a result of this. So I really love this movie. It is one of my favorite movies I've seen this. It is one of the best movies I've seen this year so far, and I'm going to give Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves a 9.5 out of 10 or an A.
Next, I have Tetris. This is an example of taking the behind the scenes story about financing the game from Russia to America and using it to make cinema. Besides solid performances and fantastic writing, the editing and music are beyond electrifying. Not just incorporating many of the game's mechanics into the filmmaking, but also keeping you engaged throughout the story. This is hands down one of the year's early best, which I'm totally giving the seal of cinema.
Next film I'm going to talk about is a movie I really wanted to like because the director has done a great independent film from 2 decades ago, and has not made a good movie, and has not made a movie that I've really liked ever since. But I was hoping this one would be like the comeback he deserved. It was called a good. The film was called A Good Person, and let me look this up really quick so that I could tell you what A Good Person is about. A Good Person is a new film starring Florence Pugh and Morgan Freeman, and it follows Allison, who is a young woman with a wonderful fiance and a blossoming career and supportive family and friends, whom her world however crumbles in the blink of an eye when she survives an unimaginable tragedy, emerging from recovery with an opioid addiction and unresolved grief. In the following years, she forms an unlikely friendship with her would-be father-in-law that gives her a fighting chance to put her life back together. I really wanted to like this movie. I really, really wanted to like this movie. Unfortunately, the cliched and messy screenplay was what killed it for me. It's filled with cliches that you've seen in other films before. The characters feel half baked and underdeveloped, and the tone was just really inconsistent. Like I couldn't decide if it wanted to be a comedy or a drama. But here's what I'll say about the film. I already talked about. Okay. Florence Pugh gives out one of her better performances as Allison, and Morgan Freeman was fantastic as Daniel, and probably one of his best performances he's given out in quite some time. Zach Braff did a very good job with the way he directed this movie, since you could see the vision and passion he had behind the camera, especially with the way he directs the actors in it. The soundtrack was good, the cinematography was fantastic. It's got some good humorous moments, and the ending was surprisingly solid and satisfying. However, I already mentioned that. However, this movie was a mess. I already mentioned the screenplay being a cliched mess. Not just with its clunky dialogue. Oh, wait, I already mentioned that. The story was also a cliched mess, too. And you know, I don't have a problem when a movie combines some genres together into one, as long as it's carefully balanced and staying consistent. But when you have a movie where the tone can't even decide what type of genre it wants to be, then it feels very inconsistent. And a good person is sadly guilty of this. Now, I understand that the movie is trying to tackle themes of guilt, grief, and redemption, but here's one glaring issue I have with this. We've seen better movies that covered those themes before. Not just that, but the way the characters were written in the film just make those themes feel poorly written in my eyes. And the movie's supposed to have the characters feel like real people, but minus Allison, played by Florence Pugh, and Daniel, played by Morgan Freeman, every other character felt paper thin, two-dimensional, and pretty shallow. Also, the film was 15 minutes too long. Well, I understand why the film was 128 minutes long, but oh my god, there were some scenes in the film that dragged on and on and on and on. And I was getting so bored as a result of this. And the pacing was a sluggish mess as a result of this. The editing was an awkward mess. And like I said before, it's filled with cliches that you've seen in other films before. Overall, the film is well acted, especially from Florence Pugh and Morgan Freeman, and does have some memorable moments here and there. But unfortunately, I found a good person to be well-intentioned, but sadly cliched. To be a well-intentioned but cliched and uneven mess. So, straight, but 5 out of 10 for C plus for a good person. Sorry, Zach Braff. And now I'm gonna finally talk about the Sundance Film Festival winner that I saw back in April this year. It was called 1001. 1001 is about. 1001 is basically about. Hold on a second. 1001 follows an unapologetic and free-spirited Inez, played by Teyana Taylor, who kidnaps her 6-year-old son Terry from the foster care system, and together they set out to reclaim their sense of home, identity, and stability in a rapidly changing New York. I love this movie. This is one of the most powerful, poignant, and breathtaking films I've seen this year so far. A.V. Rockwell did an incredible job crafting such a brilliant character study portrait of mother and son, while also executing its themes of identity and redemption in a well-detailed manner, as well as family. Teyana Taylor gives out one of the most powerful breakthrough performances I've seen this entire year so far as Inez. Her performance was so powerful. While you hate what her character sometimes does in the film, you also feel that her heart is in the right place since she does rescue Terry from the foster care system by kidnapping him. And she tries her absolute best to be a good mother to Terry, despite her being arrested and having a drug addiction problem. It's really hard for me to talk about this movie without spoiling it, especially since this is one of those movies that's sadly going to get overlooked. All I'll say is that there's a twist towards the end of the film that had my jaw dropped, and in a good way. And it also featured one of the most heart-wrenching endings I've ever seen in the movie this year so far. The only problem I have with the film, however, is that there's a character named Lucky in the film, played by Will Catlin. Not to knock on his performance though, he was fantastic. I just wish his character was a bit more well developed. But despite that though, I love this movie. 1001 is one of the best movies I've seen this year so far. And like Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10 or an A.
Next, we have Air. I gotta say, after a couple of years of forgettable films and a tough personal life, this was a great comeback for Ben Affleck. While it's kind of a slow burn at times, it's otherwise a well acted and well directed biopic about Nike's partnership with Michael Jordan. It's also got a killer soundtrack that's worth listening to on Spotify. This is hands down one of the better films of the year, which I'm giving the seal of approval.
I'm This is one of the best movies I've seen this year so far. It's one of the most well-acted, compelling, and highly entertaining films I've seen this year so far. And how Ben Affleck and writer Alex Convery were able to execute the true story of the origin of Air Jordan not only felt well-structured, but also highly engaging. And the performances, especially from Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Let me look this up really quick. I'm sorry. And the performances, especially from Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Jason Bateman, Chris Tucker, and Viola Davis, were fantastic. The cinematography is great. The cinematography is fantastic. Robert Richardson, you really redeemed yourself after the disastrous Emancipation last year. Good job, man. Seriously, the cinematography is fantastic. It's very well edited. The screenplay also delivers some fantastic character development, a very consistent tone, excellent dialogue, and some fantastic hard. It's well edited, well paced. The soundtrack is kick ass. The production design is terrific since it really does feel like you're back in 1984, and I found the ending to be very, very satisfying as well. Overall, Air is one of the best movies I've seen this year so far, and like John Wick Chapter 4, I'm gonna give Air a 10 out of 10 or an A plus. Well done, Ben Affleck.
Next, I have a movie that I've been eagerly anticipated for, but watching it kind of disappointed me. Next up is the Super Mario Bros. Movie. You know, this has been an interesting beast to say the least, hasn't it? Well, audiences seem to love this movie, as evidenced by its massive box office draw. Critics seem split, and unfortunately, I'm in the split category. I will say this isn't awful to say the least, and it's definitely better than that live action movie in the 90s. I just had so many issues with this one, as this could have been a masterpiece, or at least on par with the Sonic movies. So, to positives out of the way, much like Illumination's Dr. Seuss movies, I gotta give credit to them for capturing the look of the games, at least in the backgrounds. The cast is mostly on point, especially Anna Taylor-Joy as Peach, Jack Black as Bowser, and surprisingly Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. Also, Brian Tyler's instrumentals really elevate the respective scenes, especially when it comes to adapting certain themes from the Mario games. However, this was kind of a mess. For every good actor in this movie, there's at least one that's phoning it in. Keegan-Michael Key and Fred Armisen are completely miscast as Toad and Cranky Kong respectively, and plus, why
I
was Chris Pratt
disagree.
why was Chris Pratt cast as Mario again? Not that he was particularly obnoxious or anything, but hearing his voice come out of the mouth of an Italian American plumber was just jarring. Unlike some of the other roles, like Emmett from the Lego Movie or Star Lord, where his performance added to his ordinariness, he was just miscast here. Also, I hated the soundtrack. Every other scene, it's like Universal forced him to add a pop song in the background,
Yeah,
even if it doesn't fit the scene. However, my biggest issue with this movie lies in the pacing. Scenes
the
just
pacing
happen
felt too frantic. I agree with that.
Scenes just happen too quickly with little to no time to breathe, leaving the story to be just unsatisfying. I feel like this was originally going to be at least a 2 hour movie before Universal told them to cut it down at the last minute, hence why this feels too fast. But that's just a theory. Overall, I don't hate this movie, I just don't like it. This just takes the vast lore of the Mario games and just turns it into just another generic kids movie. I honestly would have liked this movie more if it was more like the Super Mario Adventures comic from the late 90s, where I feel like they fully fleshed out the characters and lore of the games and turned it into a compelling and fun 3 act structure. As for this movie, I'm gonna give it a sealed mediocrity. If you liked it, fine, but as for me, I'll just keep praying for a good Mario movie.
Here comes one of our biggest disagreements because I had a blast watching this movie, but I'm not going to deny that it has some issues. Yes, Soren did mention the pacing felt a bit too frantic, and I agree with that. I also felt the film was too short, which I also agree with. And I have to disagree with you on Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, Soren, because I did not like his vocal performance at all. Honestly, when I heard his voice, it didn't even sound like DK at all. It sounded more like Seth Rogen being Seth Rogen, and I felt he was horribly miscast as a result of this. And I also agree that the shoehorn in licensing, while the musical score by Brian Tyler was fantastic, the shoehorn in licensing 80s music felt really out of place. It felt so out of place, especially for a movie that's supposed to be about Mario. Like, really, you couldn't have Brian Tyler's amazing score in that film? Despite this, though, I like this movie a lot. The animation is fantastic. The story had me invested throughout. Yes, it's light on story, but that's expected. I mean, when going to a movie about Mario, it still kept me invested throughout. The writing was solid. The directing was very good. Most of the voice acting is good. Chris Pratt was great as Chris Pratt was very good as Mario. Charlie Day was one of the best things about the film as Luigi. Anya Taylor Joy was great as the voice of Princess Peach. But my God, and I have to disagree with you on Keegan Michael Key as Toad Soren, because I thought he did a very good job. But Jack Black was fantastic as Bowser. He easily stole the entire show. The
Yeah,
way
even
he
in even in the worst movie, he always pulls it off. I will give him
indeed,
that.
excuse me. Yeah, really. Um, the Brian Tyler's musical score is fantastic. It's nicely edited. There, there's some really good humor and some really good some references and Easter eggs, and there are some very good battle sequences, and the ending I also found very satisfying. So overall, I really like the Super Mario Brothers movie. I think it's a very underrated movie, and I'm gonna give it up. I found it highly entertaining and engaging throughout. And honestly, it's my favorite movie of by Illumination so far. They have not. I have not liked some of their movies. I have not liked Illumination's filmography. minus some of the first two Sing movies. But so this was a nice change of pace for once, and I'm definitely going to give the Super Mario Brothers movie an 8 out of 10 or a B+. This is highly underrated. Check it out.
Speaking of underrated, How to Blow Up a Pipeline. This one's an overlooked gem about a group of activists planning and attempting to destroy an oil pipeline as an act of action against the government. Despite some slow moments here and there, this was held together by a tense score, solid social commentary, and a terrific cast of young actors who are bound to have stellar careers after this. Don't let this one slip your radar as it gets a seal of approval.
Nice. And our next movie is another disagreement, which is expected given film criticism. We had split decisions about this one, but go ahead and explain what the film is about, Søren.
All right, the movie is called Paint. This movie tries to combine a Bob Ross-like character with Wes Anderson-like comedy drama, but ultimately this was kind of a mess. It's really more awkward and dull than quirky and funny throughout, but fortunately the performances are all solid and the story is well-meaning and somewhat entertaining. So overall, it's a decent, albeit trite, one-time rental, which I'm giving the seal of accuracy.
To me, aside from another film I'm going to talk about later, this is the worst independent movie I've seen this year so far. Paint was such a bizarre movie, and not in a good way. Paint is one of those movies where you have no idea what you just witnessed due to how inconsistent and convoluted it felt. I get that writer and director of the film, Britt McAdams, was trying to do by making this into a comedy, a Wes Anderson-like comedy. But my biggest issue is that with this movie is that he was trying way too hard to replicate the style of humor that Wes Anderson is known for doing. And worst of all, although Owen Wilson's character is fictional, his character is based on the real painter Bob Ross, and it couldn't even decide whether it wanted to celebrate Bob Ross's works or deconstruct it. And that really frustrated me to no end. And plus, we've seen stories like this before. Yes, it's well acted. The soundtrack, especially from Owen Wilson, who gives out a very good performance in the film. The cinematography was terrific, and the soundtrack is solid, but the whole movie was a mess. 3 out of 10 or D+. I really did not like this film at all. I guess I got to talk about what I consider to be the worst independent movie I've seen this year so far. Do I?
I guess so.
Okay. All right. Okay, so, folks, it's one thing whenever I see a comedy that like tries way too hard to be funny, but it's another trying to have a premise of the movie that could have some potential for its comedy, and it falls very flat on its face due to how poorly executed it felt. Folks, I'm talking about Mafia Mama. I saw this opening night with my mom because she wanted to see this movie, and it's basically about a mild-mannered suburban mom who unexpectedly inherits her late grandfather's mafia empire in Italy. Guided by the firm's trusted consigliere, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, she hilariously defies everyone's expectations as she finds herself stuck in the middle of a deadly mob war. Now, I didn't think it looked all that bad when I saw the trailer for this at my showing of 1001. I thought it looked like a fun movie, a fun comedy movie that could have been a really good spoof on like the Mafia movies, but unfortunately that was not the case at all. Well, then again, it didn't surprise me that this was from the director of Twilight and Miss Bala, but let's not forget she also directed a really really good independent gem, 13. Some independent gems like 13 and Miss You Already. But what the hell happened with this one? I'll pause this right off the bat right now. Monica Bellucci. Monica Bellucci was easily the best thing about the film. She gave out a very good performance. And she's the only character in the film. She has some logical sense on how to run the mob. And I was like, why can't she be the boss in the film? Why can't she be the mafia boss in the film? And while I did like Toni Collette in the film with her performance, I could not stand her character. I could not stand her character whatsoever. And the cinematography is very good, and I did laugh. I did laugh about 3 times throughout the whole film. But hold on. Other than that, though, this is one of the dumbest movies I've seen this year so far. The story was a mess. The script was atrocious. That's about really terrible dialogue. Really terrible. Most of the dialogue was just terrible. The characters are nothing but a bunch of cartoonish idiots. 85% of the jokes fall very flat on its face, and some of them just go on and on and on and on to the point where I'm just sitting there going like, get on with it! Like I said before, it's one thing when a comedy does when a movie is a comedy and it doesn't make you laugh, but it's another when a movie tries way too hard to be funny and it just doesn't make you laugh at all, for the most part. And Mafia Mama is one of the worst examples of this. The rest of the acting was the rest of the acting was terrible. Excuse me. The score wasn't too. The soundtrack wasn't that great. It's clumsily edited. The pacing was a sluggish mess. It's filled with cliches that you've seen in other films before. And yeah, I agree. I love Toni Collette, but boy was she terrible in this movie. A waste of her talent. And the ending all of a sudden pulls that identity thief. The ending all of a sudden pulls a Queen Pins ending where it involves a trial. It involves them going through a trial, and I am not making this up. I am not making this up, by the way, when I say this. One of my friends, Alex Meyer, shout out to you, dude. He messaged me about the film's ending, which I completely forgot about. But now that he told me about it, this is what he had to say. Okay. This is what he put about the ending. Let me look this up. If I could find this, if I could find it. Okay, here we go. Okay, so he stated, and the lawyer's best friend. What the hell was that? I'm sorry, but no way in real life can you barge your way into a courtroom and take over a case and win. That's not how law works. And of course, she played the gender victim card to get Toni Collette off scot-free. They literally pulled the gender victim card again! This is why I said this movie pulls a Queen Pins. I hear you, Rarity. I hear you. Oh my god. And I can't make this up, by the way. That's literally what happens at the end of the film. But the worst scene in the film really pissed me off because the worst scene in the film really, really angered me to no end. And it's where one, and it involves a scene where Toni Collette's character is having this video chat with her boss and the co-workers. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she's being attacked by this one guy who spotted her, and they're too busy to notice. They're too busy to notice her being attacked because they're looking at sexual things on the computer, including a woman's ass. And yet, after she finally attacked the guy and killed him, her co-workers immediately fire her character because they thought she was drunk, even though they were too busy to notice that she was about to be attacked and raped by a guy just because they were looking at butts. They were looking at asses on the internet. Like, what the fuck was that?
By the way, to anyone binge watching this podcast, take a shot every time one of us do that John Chong clip.
This is one of the worst movies I've seen this year. It makes Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania look like Avengers and Endgame in comparison. It's that bad. And I know they're two different movies. But I thought I would make that comparison to describe how bad this thing is. This is one of the worst movies of the year so far, and it's so far the worst independent movie I have seen in 2023 so far. 2 out of 10, or D. I hated this movie so much. Do not waste your time with this one at all. Please do not waste your time with this one. It is not worth it.
Next, I have Renfield. This was a hell of a time. Chris McKay delivers on this fun blend of comedy and horror, held together by the comedic performances of Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage. The writing's a lot more clever than it has any right to be. The music's a ton of fun, and the action scenes and gore are nothing short of awesome, even if the CGI and shaky cam can be a bit much at times. It's not going to win any Oscars, but it's one of the most fun times I had with a movie this year. I'll give it the seal of approval.
I wish I could, because Renfield is yet another movie I've seen this year so far where it started off very promising in the first half, but by the second half of the film, by the time the second half of the film kicked in, it lost a lot of steam. It's sometimes fun and does deliver some entertaining moments here and there, as well as some brilliant performances and chemistry by Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage. The rest of the acting was solid too, including from Awkwafina, who also has some funny moments in the film too. The soundtrack is very good. The cinematography is good. The fight sequences are a lot of fun to watch, and the film definitely nails its comedic tone. And its use of makeup and practical effects were fantastic. Unfortunately, this is one of those movies where it came off as being messy and inconsistent, especially not only in terms of its screenplay, but also its storytelling, where it tries to be two things all at once, but doesn't quite work. The directing and editing felt all over the place at times. It also has a share of cliches that you've seen in other films before, and yet this is yet another film I've seen this year where it felt too short and the pacing felt too frantic at times as a result of this. Yeah, overall, I really wanted to like Renfield, but I couldn't. It's not a terrible movie by any means necessary. It was just okay. It was just an okay movie. Could it have been worse? Yes. But could it have been better? Unfortunately, yes. Sorry, but I'm going to have to give Renfield a 5 out of 10 or a C+.
And now we're gonna get to a movie that Nick really enjoyed, but I was just disappointed by. That is Ari Aster's
Wait a minute, sorry. Wait a minute. I have the next movie to talk about.
Oh, sorry about that. Go on.
No worries. Oh boy. Oh boy, this movie. Oh boy, this movie. Oh my god. Folks, this is one of those movies I saw this year where I was not looking forward to it because I have not been a fan of like, hold on a second. I have not been a fan of these types of movies other than well, actually, I'm going to cut to the chase right now. The film is called The Pope's Exorcist. Yep, The Pope's Exorcist. It's based on a true story involving Father Gabriel Amorth, chief exorcist for the Vatican, who battles Satan and innocent possessing demons. A detailed portrait of a priest who performed more than 100,000 exorcisms in his lifetime. Oh my god. This movie was pretty bad. Here's what I'll say about the film. I have not been a fan of those exorcism movies other than The Exorcist and its third film, The Exorcist 3, and to some extent, The Last Exorcism, but my God, what a pathetic movie this was. I mean, I didn't hate myself for watching this. Unlike last year's Pray for the Devil, but make no mistake, this was such a pretty bad movie as a result of this. Most of the acting, especially from Russell Crowe, was solid. The cinematography is great. It does have a couple of creepy moments here and there. And the musical score was solid overall, but oh my God. Not only was this a bad rehash of The Exorcist, but the third act was unbelievably stupid. Especially with the CGI face, especially with the horrendous amount of CGI that was in the movie. It was so bad, I had to take a couple screenshots to describe how bad the CGI is. Look at this one. Looks like somebody must have been a fan of Pink Floyd The Wall. And speaking of which, and here's another round of terrible CGI. Look at what happens when the naked bloody woman all of a sudden gets decapitated. Hold on. It's like a CGI splatter fest. But the one that really made me lose it the most was this one. Look at this one. I couldn't have said it better myself. Oh my God, that was. It was so bad. It was so bad that I couldn't even describe to you how much I was laughing hysterically at how awful it looked. Yeah, but even with that though, this was still a pretty bad movie. No matter how much I laughed at the batshit insane stuff that was in the third act, I still cannot excuse the movie for being not only a really bad rehash of The Exorcist, but for basically exploiting Father Gabriel Amor for the sake of entertainment. And for that reason alone, it is a 3 out of 10 or a D+. Yeah, I don't recommend it at all, honestly. I mean,
So
I almost want to recommend it just for how batshit insane the third act is, but then I would realize I would be recommending a rehash of The Exorcist, which I will not do at all. But
so
regardless,
is it like the Troll 2 of a new generation or something?
I wouldn't go that far, but boy, was this was just laughably bad, especially with the CGI effects.
All right, now we're gonna get to the other movie that Nick and I are polar opposite on, and that is Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid. After 2 big hits with Hereditary and Midsommar, I was really hoping that Ari Aster would pull 3 for 3. However, this might be this year's men as to how much of a disappointment this was. While I did like the first act and the ending, and the performances are all stellar, the screenplay, pacing, and direction were such a mess. Half the time, I was just looking at my watch over and over, trying to grasp the plot. This was nearly 3 hours, and it honestly felt like 5. I wouldn't mind so much, except most of the characters are either bland or straight up annoying. And the visuals, while ambitious, can leave you more weirded out and confused than anything else. Honestly, I'm not the least bit surprised this bombed like a nuclear blast, because this was just a boring and pretentious clusterfuck of an experience, and I'm sadly gonna give Beau is Afraid a seal of mediocrity.
I do understand where you're coming from, man, and here's what I'll say about the film. It's not. I would say out of all the movies Ari Aster has directed, this is by far the weakest he's done. But I still like this movie regardless. The reason why I didn't love it as much as Hereditary or Midsommar is because I did think the film was a bit too long. While I understand why it needed to be long, my issue is that there were some scenes that did drag a little bit and feel out of place. And as a result, the pacing does drag in some parts as a result of this, especially in the middle. And I have to disagree with you on the ending, Søren, because I did not like the ending at all. While I appreciate it for being ambiguous, I felt it was a bit questionable at best. And yeah, the storytelling can feel a bit overstuffed at times, but that's really all I have to say anything negative about the film. I was still emotionally invested in what was going on throughout. The writing was very good. The writing and directing from Ari Aster was very good. It's not only well directed, but also with the screenplay, it delivers some great dialogue and a consistent tone. Now, the movie was marketed as a horror comedy when it's really more of a dark comedy involving like anxiety and paranoia. So if you were expecting like some horror elements into this, you're gonna feel disappointed. The acting was fantastic. Joaquin Phoenix gives out one of his finest performances of his career as Beau. The way he performs as that character is outstanding. Patty LuPone was also fantastic in this movie as Beau's mother, Mona. The score was fantastic, and so was the film cinematography. The editing was very good, and the film has brilliant production and set design as well. And there were some moments in the film that I'm not going to lie that did have me laughing a bit. And there were some things in the film that, although it's not marketed as a horror film, it does have some intriguing and tension-filled moments in it too. So while this isn't as amazing as Hereditary or Midsommar, I overfound Beau is Afraid to be an exhilarating odyssey experience involving anxiety and paranoia, featuring Joaquin Phoenix featuring Joaquin Phoenix in one of his finest performances he's given out in his career. After this, and as 2 other movies he's released, I'm really curious to see what Ari Aster does next. Because while it isn't as amazing as his previous 2 movies, this was still an exhilarating experience that makes me look forward to Aster's projects. I thought it was a very good movie, but like I said, but I do understand why some, including you, Søren, wouldn't like it and why some would hate it. But overall, this is something we'll probably never see again, and for that reason alone, I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10 or a B plus.
Next, we have Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, and to call this an improvement over the underwhelming Operation Fortune would be a huge understatement. This was a very well-directed and well-acted war thriller filled with great cinematography and music. The editing is also tight and intense, minus some slow moments near the middle. I'd say definitely go out of your way to see this, as I'll give it a strong seal of approval.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. Yeah, I'm with you on this one. On this one, this is one of his stronger films he's done, and one of the better war movies I've seen this decade so far. This is a movie that does a great job showing on how soldiers were affected during the 20-year Afghanistan war, while also being a really good rescue movie too. The only issues I had with the film is that I did think the script could have used some improvement on some of the clunky dialogue and some of the side characters, and the film does suffer through some pacing issues here and there too. Otherwise, everything else from the story to the acting, especially from Jake Gyllenhaal and Dar Salim, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, to the musical score, the cinematography, to the editing and war sequences, was terrific. This was such a gripping war drama that I not only really enjoyed, but feel that people should show to future generations and talk about the horrors of what the U.S. veterans went through during the Afghanistan war. So, yeah, I'm glad Guy Ritchie really did something different, and I'm really also happy that this was made too. So, 8 out of 10 or a B plus. Good job, Guy Ritchie, on bouncing back. I do have to go to the bathroom though, but Søren, you may continue on. I'll be right back.
All right, all right. Since he's going off, I might as well talk about Evil Dead Rise. Man, talk about yet another horror movie reboot that nobody asked for, demanded, or even wanted. While the performances and production values are decent, and I admittedly had some fun with the climax, this movie was just so stupid. The characters are either dull or trite or just make all these stupid decisions just to get the plot going. The jump scares and false scares are beyond apparent, and it's like every 10 minutes it wants to remind you of 3 better movies directed by Sam Raimi, as well as a movie completely ripped off from Stanley Kubrick's horror classic, The Shining. Honestly, they should just stop it with this franchise because it's safe to say this franchise's soul has officially been swallowed. As for me, it gets a seal of mediocrity. Well, I guess I might as well go over my little re-review since he's taking a bit longer than. Oh wait,
Yes, sorry about that. So what did you finish talking about?
I was talking about my take on Evil Dead Rise.
Okay. All right. So, a huge fan of the. Okay, so my take on the Evil Dead movies, I would say this: I love the first Evil Dead movie. Evil Dead 2 is one of the best horror sequels I've ever seen in my life. Army of Darkness was good, but not great, and I really enjoyed them. And I really enjoyed the Fede Alvarez film from 2013. And I still think the Fede Alvarez 2013 reimagining is very underrated. So with that being said, how was Evil Dead Rise, and where does this rank on the Evil Dead franchise? Well, Søren, you're gonna probably. Well, Søren, sorry to tell you this, man, but this is now my third favorite movie in the Evil Dead franchise, behind the very first Evil Dead movie and Evil Dead 2. My only issues I have with the film is that there were times in the first act and either in the middle towards the end of the second half, where I did feel a couple pacing issues, where I did feel the pacing being a bit wonky at times, and most of the characters in this movie, in this new Evil Dead Rise movie, felt a bit underdeveloped. Like, I really wish we got to know more and more about Ellie, Danny, and Bridget. I mean, out of all the characters in Evil Dead Rise, Beth and Cassie were the only characters in the film that I felt were well developed. Despite this, though, I really like this one a lot. I think it's one of the better films I've seen this year so far. I love the way the story was executed. The script was very good. Lee Cronin's directing was fantastic. The acting, especially from Lily Sullivan, Alyssa Sutherland, Morgan Davies, and Nell Fisher, was fantastic. The score was great. The cinematography is great. The editing is very good. And the practical effects. My God, the practical effects were absolutely fantastic. I love me some good practical effects. Yeah, this is one of the better movies I've seen this year so far. And one of the most satisfying horror movies I've seen this year so far, too. So, 9 out of 10 or an A- for Evil Dead Rise. I really like this film a lot. Hold on a second. All right, so next film I'm going to talk about is it's the film that I've been interested. I've been wanting to check this one out ever since I first saw the trailer for it. I'm going of 1001, and it's called Polite Society. It involves a martial artist in training who believes that she might save her older sister from her impending marriage. After enlisting the help of her friends, she tries to pull off the most ambitious of all winning heists in the name of independence and sisterhood. This is one of those movies where I was interested in seeing, and I was thinking this is one of those movies where I would really like, but I did not think I would love it this much. Polite Society was fantastic. It's one of the most well-acted, highly entertaining, and exhilarating films I've seen this year so far. I mean, British humor mixed in with Bollywood action. How can I say no to that? The only issue I have with the film is that even though I understand why they were there were one or two decisions made in the film that I thought were a bit unnecessary, but that's really it. I'm sorry. I don't want to even say the actress's name because I feel like I'm going to butcher her name. But I will say this. The actress that played Rhea Khan or The Fury gave out such a riveting breakthrough performance. The way her performance came up in the film was nothing short of just spectacular. All the performances were fantastic, but it's the one that played Rhea Khan that really stood out to me the most. What's more is that the story had me emotionally engaged throughout. The script and directing by Nita Manzoor was fantastic. The soundtrack was great. The cinematography was terrific. The editing was excellent. It's very well paced throughout. And the fight sequences, holy shit. Especially in the third act of the film, I couldn't believe how amazing and insane it looked. It's also one of the funniest movies I've seen this year so far, too. Like, when it came to the comedy of the film, holy shit, I was dying of laughter at the amount of level of British humor they threw in the film. And the ending was fantastic as well. Overall, one of the best movies I've seen this year so far. 9.5 out of 10 or an A. And I think we're gonna. Oh yeah, I have to talk about this one. I have to talk about this one now. Give me a second. Folks, I just saw one of the worst rom-com movies I've ever seen in my life. And it is called Love Again. It is called Love Again. And I shit you not, this is what the film is about. This is what the film is about. Mira Ray, who is struggling to cope with the death of her fiancé, unintentionally sends a number of romantic messages to his old cell phone, which has been reassigned to journalist Rob Burns. When he is tasked with writing a feature about Celine Dion, yes, really, Rob asks her for help finding a way to meet Mira in real life. I literally cannot even describe how much I absolutely hated this movie. And it's too bad too, because from the trailers alone, it didn't look all that bad. It was just some generic rom-com fluff that you would probably pop in on either the Lifetime or Hallmark channel. But the movie, Jesus Christ. Aside from its predictability, there is no chemistry between the actors that played Rob Burns and Mira Ray whatsoever, especially when their performances are absolutely terrible. There is no chemistry between the two main leads whatsoever. The rest of the acting, most of the acting was terrible. The story was a muddled mess. This writing was terrible, especially since it contains some really, really bad dialogue, really bland characters that you don't give two shits about, and filled with cliches that you've just seen in other films before. The soundtrack annoyed the shit out of me. The editing was all over the place. The pacing was a sluggish mess. It's predictable as hell, and especially with its ending. You already knew that the two main leads were going to get together and they were going to fall in love. We already knew that. Yet what I find fucked up about this movie and the way the story was executed was that how in the hell does a girl like Mira Ray send text messages to her old fiance's old cell phone number, and then it gets reassigned to a different person who she doesn't even know? Like, how does that make any sense?
Like, you think after her fiance changed her number, her contacts would automatically reset.
Sadly, the movie thinks otherwise, since it's in Bullshitville. You know you're in trouble when the only redeeming things in the film are that Celine Dion looks like she was having fun in the film, and Nick Jonas actually delivers a good performance in his brief cameo appearance, and the cinematography was solid too. But otherwise, yeah, this is one of the worst movies I've seen this year so far. 1 out of 10 or a D-. Fuck this movie.
All right. Thankfully, we end our reviews with the 3 good movies. First, we have Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Honestly, this might be the most underappreciated film of the year so far. This truly is a John Hughes-esque dramedy carried by a fantastic cast and a screenplay that's not only smart and funny, but also knew how to handle the themes of puberty, religion, coming of age, and identity. Honestly, I don't understand why this flat out bombed at the box office. I kind of do. It's because people would rather see the Mario movie and the Evil Dead reboot just because they're popular properties. Regardless, I definitely say this is a must-see of the year, and I'll give it the seal of cinema, hands down.
This is hands down the best movie I've seen this year so far. This is hands down the best movie I've seen this year so far. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is not only such a faithful film adaptation of Judy Blume's book of the same name, but this was one of the most beautiful, entertaining, relatable, and deeply moving films I've seen this year so far. And when I say it's relatable, I really mean it. The way it executed its themes on popularity and what it means to fit in, as well as religion and what happens when you experience puberty for the first time, as well as like family conflicts, is absolutely relatable and astonishing. And you may remember that the actress who played Cassie, the actress played Cassie Lang in the first two Ant-Man movies, Abby Ryder Forreston. She plays Margaret in the film, and I'm not kidding when I say this. This is the best breakthrough performance I've seen from a very young actress in 2023 so far. I found her performance as Margaret to be both raw and absolutely compelling. Rachel McAdams, Betty Safdie, and Kathy Bates are also fantastic in this movie as well. There was not one bad performance in the film as well. And the story was well executed. The script was fantastic. Since it's filled with some great humor, great dialogue, excellent dialogue, characters that feel like real people, and a very consistent tone that knows how to balance its comedy and drama together very well, and how to execute its themes I just mentioned earlier. And for anybody in real life who ever had to face those situations like Margaret did in the film, you will be able to relate to this movie a lot, like I did, like I did. And the soundtrack was fantastic. It's very well directed, very well written, very well directed. It did surprise me that this was directed by the same woman that directed one of my favorite movies of 2016, The Edge of 17, which is what I consider to be one of the best coming of age movies I've ever seen. And I gotta say, she pulled a 180 with this one, because the way she writes and directs the film was absolutely astonishing. The cinematography is fantastic. It's very well edited. The production values and costume design are fantastic. It feels like you're back in the 1970s, in the early 1970s, and the ending was fantastic. One of my favorite endings I've seen in the movie this year so far. Yeah, I love this movie. It is one of the best movies. It is. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. It's easily the best movie I've seen in 2023 so far. It is easily a deadlock in my top 10 of the year too. And without a doubt, I'm going to give Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret my third of 2023. 10 out of 10, or an A+ of 2023. Hold on. I just butchered it. Okay. Let me repeat that again. Without a doubt, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. It's my third film of 2023 to receive a 10 out of 10 or an A+. Well done, Kelly Freeman Craig, and to everybody involved with this great film. Well done.
All right, our final movie is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And this was such a fitting end to the Guardians franchise, a fitting end to James Gunn's involvement with the MCU, and possibly a fitting end to my overall interest in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. At least until Spider-Man 4 comes out. All the character arcs are compelling, especially with Rocket, making me both laugh and tear up throughout the 2.5-hour runtime. It's also safe to say the effects, action scenes, and music are all phenomenal as well. At this point, all I can say at the end is Godspeed, James Gunn, and good luck saving DC. Because after that awful trailer for the Marvels, it's safe to say Marvel's not going to be relevant for a while. But as for Guardians 3, it's getting to seal cinema.
I love this movie too. And yes, you heard that right. This is the first time since Spider-Man No Way Home that I have loved a movie from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yes, this movie shows why this is a perfect reminder of why I really enjoyed and loved most of the movies that were in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it is, without a doubt, one of those highly entertaining and one of the most highly entertaining and thrilling films I've seen this year so far. From its story to its writing to its directing to its acting, the acting was fantastic. The soundtrack, the cinematography, the editing, the visual effects, and even to the action sequences, the ending was satisfying. The ending was absolutely fantastic. I will say, my only problem I did have with the film is the villain. Now, while I understand why they set him up like that, um, my problem was that the character Adam Warlock felt underdeveloped and felt really underdeveloped in my opinion, and there's just no point to its character other than oh he's just evil and is looking for so and so. It's just looking. You get the point. But overall, one of my favorite movies I've seen this year so far, and I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10 or an A. Thank you, James Gunn. Thank you.
Good luck with DC, man.
Seriously.
So, as you all know, I originally did a review on the Pixar movie Turning Red when it first came out, and expressed my explicit displeasure with it, calling it a mediocre take on puberty with annoying human characters. However, much like a more infamous YouTube reviewer, I may have gone too far in a few places. And watching that particular person's re-review on this movie just gave me an idea of giving y'all a re-review on this movie to hopefully right some wrongs and finally get everyone to put down their flames and pitchforks at me. Now, my initial positives with Turning Red pretty much remain from earlier. The animation is as stunning as you come to expect from Pixar, and its message about puberty and self-identity is mostly well handled. One of the biggest things I take back is what I said about the overall style. I claimed that I was trying to be hip and cool for the Gen Z crowd, when it's really just trying to recapture what it's like to be a teenager in the early 2000s, and I grew to appreciate it. I also take back calling Mei Lee a poorly written and unlikable protagonist. Now, some of my biggest complaints are still there. Most, na- most notably, I still don't like Ming Lee as a mother character. I mean, she's not quite Buck Cluck bad, but she's almost up there. She just comes across as not only a self centered Karen who pushes her mother into greatness, and unlike Violet's mom from the Chocolate Factory reboot, where we're supposed to despise her guts, this movie expects us to sympathize with her, and I'm sorry, I just can't. Especially after certain scenes like directly blaming the convenience store clerk for her daughter's crush on her, and blaming her close friends for her going to the party. Also, the writing could have used some work. You got the as you know exposition at the beginning, you got the generic bully, you got certain plot holes like the ancestors making this thing about ejecting the panda before bully takes over you, and the climax, they turn to the pandas with no problem. Oh, and that fucking trucking bitch still makes me want to slit my wrist with a 1,000 degree knife. Seriously, where was the FBI when that was written, storyboarded, acted out, animated, and edited? So overall, while Turning Red may not be a masterpiece per se, or among Pixar's finest, I still say it was decent. I'll have to issue an apology to both Pixar and Domichi for bashing one of their passion projects, and as I've seen far worse in terms of Pixar and Disney. I mean, have you seen Lightyear and Disenchanted? Those are way worse.
Or Cars 2.
Yeah. Anyways, with that out of the way,
We're on to
now
our final topic of the night. So go ahead.
now if you're subscribed to AniMat's YouTube channel, then you might have seen this recent video where he put together this tier list on various characters from the Muppets. Only not in the way you think. He basically ranked them within this simple question: which Muppets would most likely drop the F bomb? After seeing that video for myself, that got me thinking. What if I took a similar concept for another popular franchise? So I figured that as a fun way to conclude this episode of the show, I do the same thing, but with My Little Pony characters.
Okay.
Okay, let me just try to share screen here.
All right. And let me pull this up. There we go.
All right, all right. As you can see here, I put together this tier list based on various levels of characters, and right here we have a little expansive list of My Little Pony characters. And right now, I'm gonna have, but the two of us are gonna rank them among who would regularly drop the F bomb, who has sworn off saying it but has said it at some point, hasn't quite said it but can sort of desire it, hasn't said it before and refuses to say it, and legally can't say the F word. So Nick, which one do you want me to talk about first?
How about Fluttershy?
Yeah. Now Fluttershy is pretty complicated because while she does represent the element of kindness and she is rather she does try to keep it cool at times, there are certain times where she couldn't help but just lash out at times. And you know that episode Flower Brother, where
Yeah.
she pretty much dropped Equestria's version of the F bomb.
Right.
So I'll put her right here.
Okay.
Now as for rarity, yeah, I don't. Yes, I'm sure she has heard of it, heard the F word once or twice, but I feel like saying it would be against her character. So she would go into the hasn't seen the F word and refuse to say it. Twilight though is pretty much the same. She does represent. She is the princess of friendship, but she does have her moments of anger. So I put in the same level as Fluttershy.
Okay.
Applejack, I think, is the same. I don't think she'd dare say the F word, so she's not the same as Rarity. Rainbow Dash, honestly, despite her element of laughter, she does have her moments of.
You mean element of loyalty?
Element of loyalty. She does have her selfish moments, and yeah, if she said the F word in one of her more selfish moments, I wouldn't be too surprised. Now, I put her in the orange category, but she is mostly well mannered. Pinkie Pie, I don't know. I put her in the orange. Gummy, yeah, he doesn't talk. So he goes right here. Same for the Cake Twins. They're pretty much babies, so they go in the bottom here. Oh, and Flurry Heart as well.
Right.
Aloysius, he's pretty much an owl, so he pretty much can't talk.
Right.
Starlight, yeah, she whether in her heroic moments or villainous moments, I wouldn't be too surprised if she dropped some F bombs in her acts of rage. So I put her in the top. Now for Ember, I think she'd drop some F bombs in her more aggressive moments too. Wildna, yeah, she's not gonna say it since she can't talk. Same for Tank.
Obviously.
Same for Angel Bunny, minus that one episode where he switches places with Fluttershy, but I'm not gonna count it.
Right.
Applejack's parents, yeah, I think they're one of those parents who wouldn't dare let what Applejack or her siblings cuss, so I'd put her here. Same for Applejack's parents. Same for where is she? Same for Granny Smith. Spike, yeah, I put him here. Silver Breeze, yeah, he's pretty selfish. I'd put him right at the top. Cozy Glow, I'd say, is one of the most selfish and spoiled villains of the My Little Pony universe. And if she drops some F-bombs in her life, then I wouldn't be too surprised, to be honest. Okay, I do apologize if this is a bit slow. Admittedly, I didn't really plan this out before I did this here.
Oh, there's a Rarity's cat who you might want to put in the same category as like.
Oh, okay.
Flurry.
As soon as there she is, because again, she can't talk.
Right.
Thorax. No, he's not going to say it. Skulo, I wouldn't be too surprised, but I wouldn't be too surprised if she gets into a pickle if any of her guardians hear her say it. Same for Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle. Yeah, I'll find her eventually. The captain of the pirate parrots. Yeah, they are pretty much sailors, so I wouldn't be too shocked if she. Mrs. Cake, no, I'd put her in the yellow category. Same with her husband. Smolder, I wouldn't be too surprised. Celestia, no, I think she swore off the F word, but Luna, I think is a bit more complicated. Oh, there's Sweetie Belle. Tirak, maybe. Same with the Storm King. Discord, I don't know. Maybe. Big Mac, he rarely even talks outside of a yep and nope. And even then, I doubt he'd say it. Same with the mayor of Ponyville. Or Cheerily. Gilda, yeah, I'd say she's. I wouldn't be too shocked if she said it. Sia Pony, I don't know. She hasn't had much of a role in the My Little Pony movie, but I think it's safe to put it here. Tea Sandwich is pretty much the same as Pinkie Pie, so I'll put her next to her here. Put him next to her here. Mud Pie, nah, I doubt it. Queen Chrysalis, maybe. Princess Cadence, no. Søren the Wonderbolt, well, he is pretty much in the Ponyville equivalent of the Marine, so I wouldn't be too shocked. Now, if only the leader of the Wonderbolts was on here, but unfortunately, nah. Tempest, I wouldn't be shocked. Babseed, I'd put right next to Kyurema Crusaders. The Flim brothers, maybe. Yuna, no. Trixie, maybe. Actually, I'll put her here since, yeah. Flowersight's dad, no. Capper, maybe. Snips and Snails, maybe. The Queen of the Hippogriffs, no. The Princess of the Hippogriffs, maybe. But maybe not. Shining Armor, maybe. Nightmare Moon, maybe. The Dr. Hoops pony, maybe. Perhaps. I haven't really seen Doctor Who, so I wouldn't say. The hawk that accompanies the Kurima Crusaders, I forget her name.
Gabby.
Gabby, thank you. Maybe. I put her in the maybe category. Fluttershy's, I'm sorry, Twilight's mom, no. Lord, the Crystal Empire baddie, no. Maybe. The GJ pony, I don't think has said a word correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. This guy, the
Bulk biceps.
Bulk biceps. Yeah, I don't think he. I don't think he even talks himself. Yeah. So Sakura, even though she does speak in rhyme, I don't think she'd rhyme anything with the F word. So no. Next we have Daring Do, maybe. Same with her bitter rival. Next we have this one. I forget his name, but
Pipsqueak.
Pipsqueak, thank you. Nah, he's not gonna say it. The fashion pony, maybe, but highly unlikely. Sandbar, maybe. Derpy, no. I believe this is Pinky and Cheese's kid. No.
Little Cheese, yeah.
Little Cheese, thank you. The Wizarding Pillar, no, I doubt he'd say it. Okay, I know this pony, but I don't know her name.
Octavia Melody.
Octavia Melody, I put her right here.
What about Sugar Bell?
Sugar Bell.
She's right here.
Oh, thank you. I think she'd go here. This one's Silver Spoon, no.
Sassy Saddles.
Sassy Saddles, who is she? Let me see. Sassy Saddles. Oh, she's Rarity's manager. Maybe. Pinkie Pie's sister, no. Again, sorry if I'm dragging this out. All these ones I don't really know much about, so so I guess here it is. Here it is.
Actually, there's a couple more characters left.
Oh, Yeah, but I don't really know much about them.
You know what? Yeah, let's just end it there.
All right, here it is. Here are some My Little Pony characters who would just say the F word the most. Sorry if this was hastily put together, but admittedly, I didn't have time to plan out. So
Oh well.
yeah.
But yeah, that'll about do it for today's podcast. I hope you all enjoyed the podcast. Sorry if we stumbled a bit. We usually have a hard time. Like I usually have a hard time planning shit out sometimes. Which when we do the next podcast next month, I'll hopefully get some shit planned out for me, so that I'll save some time. And also, one last thing before we end the podcast too. This year marks 10 years that I've been doing movie reviews. That I've been doing film reviewing, 2013 through 2023. And so, to honor this occasion, coming soon, the top 20 worst and best movies that I've seen in the past 10 years.
All right. So look forward for that. Hopefully next month. But until then,
Well, it'll be coming soon, like within later this year.
yeah.
But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed tonight's podcast. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I'm sure Søren did too. And please be sure to subscribe to Søren Saunders on his YouTube channel. The link is in the description below. Give him the love he absolutely deserves. He's a great person with a lot of great talent and a really good filmer. And until we meet again for episode 38, where we cover the remaining April/May and somewhat of the June movies, and like possibly in the middle of June, who knows? But until then, until we cover that, hope you guys have a wonderful Memorial Day, and hope you guys have a great day in general too. So until we meet again for episode 38, see you soon. Take care.